Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Parker. I've been working with Photoshop for going on 30 years, I guess, since Photoshop 2. And then, I'm excited to show you some of this stuff tonight. But I'm just going to talk through several of these techniques related to portrait retouching. And as I've been working on this, I just wanted to show you. So this is this is the picture I'm going to work on tonight. And then over the course of the evening, we'll get something along these lines. And what I'm going to show you are some ways to select the subject, work on their hair, correct color. So I will go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is open this file that I've called portrait.jpg. And I'm going to open it in the raw camera raw editor, just so I can get that initial ability to have camera raw go ahead and do this part of this for me. So this is the way that the JPEG actually looks. And when I just click the auto adjustment within the camera raw viewer, it looks pretty nice. That's a good start. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up from here into Photoshop. The first thing that I do with my work is always copy the background. And then I always name it working so that I know the difference. Otherwise, I end up with a lot of things that are named something copy. It helps me like keep my brain together by naming all of my layers. This way too, I get to leave the background alone. So I've always got that unaltered layer that nothing has been done to. At the same time, most of the techniques that I'm going to show you tonight are non-destructive. So we're doing most of our changes on adjustment layers, on separate layers on top of the one we're working on. So I'll get to all that. But that preserved locked background layer gives me that sort of extra safety. So I've got my working layer going. And the first thing I'm going to do is adjust the color. I always like to zoom in. If you, on a Macintosh, you have the Command 0 key will make it fill your screen. And then from there, you can just hit Command plus on a Windows machine. I think it's Control to zoom in. Let me go back out a little bit. So the first color correction that I like to do, I'm going to go here into my adjustment layers and choose levels. What these are, this here is a histogram. And it's showing us the 256 levels from black on the left to white on the right. And normally, if you could see here, the white doesn't go all the way, kind of flattens out here. And I find this a lot, and I like to just bring everything in just a touch to sort of touch the end of this histogram. And here on the black side, usually that's about 10, but on this particular image, that looks a little too much. And so I've taken it down to 5. You can kind of see how there's like a deep valley and then a sharp spike there. And so I've just moved it in just a tick to 5. And so, right, we get that she just pops out a little bit more. And then beyond levels, the next thing I do is go to the curves. Curves do brightness and contrast. So the right side is contrast, right? And the left side is contrast, and the right side is brightness, darkness. Sometimes we can kind of get a little richness in a little more of that richness in a level that's not right at the end. So we use the levels to kind of compress the black and the white levels. And then I'm using curves to kind of get further into those curved levels, black and white levels, to kind of change things that aren't hard black and hard white. I think that's an okay way to explain curves, right? So we can see how this is going. So here's where I started, and here's where I am. I kind of started to think maybe that was too much, but I like the color here in her kind of these highlights. Those look, there's still texture in them, right? I don't want it to be so bright that those become white dots or white circles. And there's some texture in there, but it's really, really bright. Oh yeah, let's try. And then, I put in a color balance layer. What this is, you're balancing the color. She looks a little yellow to me. And so what I want to do here is just bump up the blue a little bit in the midtones And we can kind of see what that did, right? You see that kind of yellowy orange just is slightly diminished. What the preserve luminosity button does is it maintains, it makes the, what is that, the saturation of the color not change. The color won't get any darker or lighter as you change it. That's what preserve luminosity does, is makes the color not get darker or lighter. And we can shift these colors any way we like. And in this case, some of the changes I might make tonight might be a little exaggerated, sort of to make a point. Wow, that shift to cyan really looks pretty good. You don't want people to look too cold. Our skin has a, sort of a glow. And when we start to turn too blue, that's not what we want. But I kind of like this. No, now I think it's too blue again. Yeah, okay, that's better. We could also change the color cast that was the midtones. So these would be the kind of the everything between the highlights and the shadows. We can change the color cast in, the shadows, in the darker areas, and or in the highlights as well, which I'll show you a useful way for that, to use that later on. For now, I think the midtones change that I did with this, just that little blue shift, has given it, I think, a more realistic perceptual cast. And so, yeah, those are my main color. On the raw question, thank you, Christina. I like to open them in raw because I know that I'm getting all of the data. And I like it too for the kind of auto adjustment. And if you look in the raw viewer, you have a lot of other initial adjustments and masking and things that you can do in there that might take you a little longer in Photoshop. So I like to open them in raw first, but it's not really a critical step, but it's helpful, and it lets me to kind of move a few steps ahead in the process. Yeah, levels, curves, and color balance are my sort of basic initial color correction. It's the first thing that I do to just make it so that I can see it the way, that I think it looks. And I just realized I'm wearing the same color sweater as she is. Funny. So what I'm going to do now, because I'm going to end up with a lot of layers, I like to group these layers. And so I can press Shift and click on these layers. And on my Mac, I can hit Command G, and it will put them in a group. So I can turn all of them on and off at one time, which is pretty nice. And I can name it color. And so now I know where my color corrections are. And then this is pretty fun. This is a newish tool in Photoshop called Liquify. It allows us to kind of smoosh around and adjust different parts of our images in it's just a really amazing way. So I'm going to kind of come up here into her face, and there's a couple of ways we can do this. Let's first, you might have handles on the face. And what these do, we can change the size of items on the face manually, right, by dragging them. You can see the numbers on the right-hand side change as well as I do this. As you roll over different parts of the face, you can change things, frown, smile, etc. It's easy to get carried away with Liquify, so be careful with it as you go into it. Well, I prefer to use the numbers, really, because it's more helpful to me. And so I've just clicked the reset button to change all of these back. By using the numbers, I get an amount, so I know how much I've changed it. I have an idea of if I'm at the maximum or minimum or minus or plus. So I like to do that.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so when you are in Liquify, does it frame the area automatically?
Yeah, it detects the faces in the picture. So there will be, if there were multiple faces in this picture, here under the select face, I would have different folks I could select. Yeah, it automatically detects the faces, and then you choose which one. And so here in the face aware area, we can change different aspects of the face. If we hit the chain between the two, it will change them in concert. So we can make her eyes bigger, smaller. I think I've kind of just been making her right eye just a tick bigger. We could change the height, like how much they're open, right? How high up they go. This is just like magical stuff to me. It's amazing. And I'm just going to kind of run through with tilt. We can make our eyes tilt one way or the other, move them further, closer to each other. Change the, the nose. Right, we'll make our nose a little longer. You can narrow or widen noses, make them smile more or frown. I've been giving her just a little taste more of a smile. Mouth width, mouth height, etc. Yeah, amazing. Then we can also change the shape of the face by heightening the forehead, lowering it, lengthening or shortening the chin, changing the jawline, right? Make it a more square or more triangular face, and change the width of the face. Yeah, so that's pretty amazing stuff. Another thing that we can do in the Liquify area is sort of smoosh things around in the picture. And that's right here. It's the forward warp tool. So I'm going to go and change my brush to a little bit bigger size. Pressure and density are fine. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of like gently smoosh along the edge here to sort of change that curve a little bit. Something I can do here is like on her hairline, right? If I want to move these little hairs back, one of the things I can do is use the freeze mask tool. And what that does is I'm going to paint over these areas that I don't want to move. And then I can take my brush tool and kind of just, sort of brush them back. And you can see, how this might get really too weird if you, if you get out of control there. Just kind of move those things up. And see, without that don't change item there, you can see what would happen if I ran up onto it. So yeah, we just kind of move these up out of the way a little bit. And there we go. And I'll show you. So this is what we did, right? You can see her eye gets a little bigger. Her mouth changes shape a little bit. The little smudge I did along her jawline. So voila, there we go. And before, after, right? And now eyes. So we want to make the eyes like come out, maybe be brighter, pop. And some of the ways that we can do that, we'll be using masks and adjustment layers again. And so we could start, with another brightness layer. Now, I like to go ahead and mask this layer. So what I've done is I clicked on the brightness contrast adjustment layer. And we can see here that it has a mask. Excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and push Command I to invert that mask and hide it. And what I actually want to do is uncover the eyes. So I'm making a selection of the eyes now. I like to use the quick mask, which is basically, it turns everything red to show me where the mask is. That's on the right-hand side of your keyboard. It's the vertical pipe, or this slash, the one that goes from left to right. And so now I have that on, I can see where the mask is at. And I'm going to go ahead and choose B for my brush tool, which is right here. Come over here and click on the brush tool. And I can see the size of the brush. I can change that brush size by coming up here, set the hardness for the eyes, 15%. Size is great. Hardness is how much of a hard edge we're going to get. And I'll show you what is going to happen. So I'm going to zoom in on her eyes. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually painting on the mask, and I'm black conceals and white reveals. I have my quick mask set to red. So red conceals in this case, but white will reveal the thing that I want my change to affect. And what I'm doing is just dragging this over her eyes. And you see how the feather has given me kind of a not hard edge here. And once again, and I'll hit the pipe or / key to turn that back off. And we'll see if auto wants to do something. So that's the automated adjustment of the eyes. It bumped up the brightness and diminished the contrast a little bit. My personal preference is almost never to reduce contrast. I like them to be more contrasty because I feel like we don't always know what kind of screen situation they're going to be seen in, or print situation. And so I like to just leave them with enough contrast that I know that it will look good kind of across formats. But yeah, that's a pretty nice, a little brighter. Let's do a curves fill as well. I have a lot of sort of different techniques here, and you might not always use all of them, but I kind of want to run through each one so that you can kind of get an idea of the options that might be available. So this is another case where we might do like a little S curve on the eyes. But again, I've done it to the whole picture. And so what I want to do is use the same mask again on this curves layer that I've just made. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag this layer, this mask, up onto my curves layer and replace it. So now that is just going to affect my eyes, right? So this is what the curves are doing. And you can kind of drag it around and see what they do. See, it's starting to get just too dark in there. So I'm going to take this up a little bit and kind of bring out that color in her eyes a little better. Yeah. Now, right, I might not want to stack these two effects because now it's starting to look too white. And so curves might do the same thing, right? Because curves affects contrast and brightness as well. And, I kind of like the way this looks more than I like the way the brightness contrast looks. So I'm going to stick with the curves adjustment in this instance. And now, something that's fun, I'm going to come down here into her eyes. I'm going to take a white brush, or a white brush. I just changed these are the color tiles down here on the left. And what I just did was clicked on this black and white square here that returns them to the default foreground and background colors. Then I clicked on this little arrow to switch the two. And I can come into her eyes right here. And I think I have a semi-soft brush. That's good enough. And I'm actually going to paint, I'm actually going to paint onto her eyes. Note that I'm on this working layer now. I'm going to do this. Oops. You know what? I skipped a step. Yes, there. New layer. Okay. Now, here, and I'm going to choose overlay. Wow, that's a pop. A little too intense though. So I'm going to dial it back by reducing the opacity. Oh, that looks pretty nice. I'm going to name this layer, and we can change the color of the eyes too. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose hue saturation. There are different ways you could do this. Hue saturation is kind of my go-to way. Again, I want to copy this mask down onto, well, this is the way I've done it in the past. I've copied it down, but let's do it this way. What I'm going to do now, the reason I'm fumbling is because I don't actually want to unmask the entire eye. All that I want to unmask in this case is the iris, the colored part. So what I'm going to do is invert this mask to black, turn on my quick mask again so I can see what I'm doing. And then I can see that my foreground color is white, meaning I'm going to be removing the mask. And I'll go ahead and kind of come in here and just uncover her iris, the colored part of her eye, right there. And so then I'll turn this off so I can see what I'm doing. And then we can kind of just shift the hue, shift the color of the eye. My mask isn't perfect. I'd have to come back in here and kind of work on this mask a little bit, right? And we're not actually changing anything here. This is an adjustment layer. So if I decide I don't want it, I turn it off, throw it away. But that's that's an easy way to change the color of the eyes. They've still got the pop in there. They've still got the kind of brightness and contrast adjustment, any of which can be changed as you like. And then, I don't think I want to use brightness contrast. One of the things that people are drawn to look at eyes in images. And so I like to add a little extra sharpness to the eyes. That's kind of what the brightness and contrast are sort of about. So what I'm going to do to kind of sharpen the eyes a tick, I'm going to copy this layer and I'm going to come up and I'm going to choose filter, other, high pass. And so what this is doing is, and we'll come back to this later, these are the high frequencies, which are the textures. So in this case, the eyelid, the eyelashes, that kind of eye area that were the inside little circles and things. And so we want to kind of sharpen the edges, not sharpen edges, that's an actual filter, but make them pop, make them stand out a little more. In here, when you're working in this environment with the high texture pulled out, you kind of just want to adjust this radius until you see the edges. When the color starts to come back into the picture, such as kind of like it is now, you don't really want that much. I thought 2 was pretty nice. Let's go with 2. So we've done that. Now I'm going to change the blend mode for this layer again to overlay. If you could see how much that sharpness kind of pops, especially in her eyebrows, we don't want that again. So I'm going to make another or actually I'm going to take one of these masks and press Option and drag it down here, and voila. Now I have the same mask from above, and we've added just a little like sharpness to the eyes. Can you see them pop there? Just that much makes them I've saved pictures before where it might have been just a little bit out of focus, but I sharpened up the eyes and then the picture worked. So sharpening the eyes is a good thing to do. I'm going to turn off her green eyes, give her eye color back. Let me change this. Right, working copy. So I'm going to say sharpen eyes. And then I'm going to take all of these layers. I have the sharpen eyes layer selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on the rest of them, these eye layers that I've done, and choose Command G and group them. And I'm going to call these eyes. So eyes, right? It's starting to look kind of different than we started. Here we go. Let's see what it looks like. Cool. Oops. Yeah, good. Then what's next? Teeth. She's not showing us her teeth, so I'm actually going to use a different file to show you the teeth adjustments. Our teeth aren't always perfect, and I turned them all off. There we go. And so sometimes we have this yellow cast to our teeth. We drink our coffee, however we do. So this is a file I have, teeth.psd, that I had opened earlier. I already duplicated my background layer, and I have my working layer. What we want to do here is use the quick select tool, and we can kind of just make our brush a little smaller with the left and right square brackets on our keyboards. Will make that brush bigger and smaller. All of these tools that I'm telling you about also you can also adjust all of them up in the menus as well. I've over the years I've gotten really used to using the keys. So I was trying to use the quick select tool, but it wasn't doing what I expected. That's because I actually have my done earlier layer or group in this case selected, so it wasn't selecting anything. I can put it now on this layer, and I should be able to select my teeth pretty easily. There we go. Do. So that's the quick select tool. I'll open this up, and so we can kind of see all the different things that I did. Levels again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add all of these again. Whoops. Where to go? There. Okay. No, I'm not going to do that. There. That's the one I want. So you can see I had that selection made of the teeth, and when I clicked the levels adjustment layer, it automatically turned that selection into a mask. And so what I can do here, make the teeth a little brighter. I'm not going to change the dark side because that's, not what we want. But I just gave them a little more to the light area. And then I can come in here and change my the color balance. All right. Oops. Yeah, and I could have selected them again, but I'm going to hit the Option key on the mask I've already made and duplicate that mask. And so I get my color balance menu, and I can take some of that yellow out by coming up to the blues. Much better, much better. You could see, change this up to the highlights and see if maybe we take a little yellow out of them too. It's good, maybe too much. Yeah, it's pretty good. You could see too that I've made the little kind of gum areas between the teeth are also included in the mask. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and select the mask again and kind of come in here with my, I still have the quick select brush selected. What I need to get is the regular brush. I can come here and click on it, or I can hit B, the letter B, and I have to have black selected. So I'm going to swap these colors because I want to conceal just that little bit. Right, there we go. Oh, I have to do the same thing on the other layer, but I'm just going to replace it. There we go. Now those are back to kind of the color we started with, right? Pretty simple. You've also got some what did I use? Color balance and levels. Yeah, we could change our hue saturation to you could see that these are kind of like my favorite ones. Again, I hit the hue saturation adjustment level layer, copy my layer mask, and then get in here. And I'm going to look for the yellows. And maybe I'm going to desaturate them. You can see them coming out. And we could even brighten them up, right? Maybe that's too bright. Maybe those teeth are too bright. So I've only affected the yellow colors in here. I often find red in the teeth as well. You definitely don't want to take it all out. But sometimes red, changing the red saturation, lightness, or hue will fix anything else in there. So in this case, again, I've stacked color balance, hue, and saturation all together. Any one of them is an improvement. Well, levels just makes it brighter yellow, but hue and saturation dialed it back a little bit. And then the color balance is really what gave us that nice kind of white look. Early, I had actually done another layer. Let me show you what I had done earlier. Those are two blue, but these two teeth in the back here, they were still a little yellow. So I did another color balance layer just to kind of hit those as well. All right, that was the experiment with yellow. So good, right? Color balance, hue saturation, levels. Those were two blue. I like these three, pretty natural. And once again, I'm going to shift and select all of those layers, Command G, 3 steps. And there we are, teeth fixed. Yeah, these adjustment layers are great. I can't say enough good things about them. It helps you to make these changes that you want to make without making permanent changes. You can see how they interact with each other, dial them back, turn them off, and you kind of build from one to the next. So now is the tough one, hair. Hair can be a real challenge. And yeah, so you do different things with hair. She has a lot of kind of hair flying around. We have a few different options to fix the strays and the flyaways and kind of make the edges a little nicer. The first thing that I'm going to do is use the healing brush and the clone stamp. So as not to be actually working on this layer, my working layer, I'm going to create a new layer, just a blank layer. And then I'm going to come over here and choose my spot healing brush. And what this does is Photoshop decides what pixels to use to correct something. And so I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to zoom in with Command plus because I really want to get close up here because these are strands of hair. I need a much smaller brush and I can just paint them out. This can get pretty tedious and time consuming, but it really works. One of the problems though with this brush is that once you get into like a confusing area, it's going to start to do weird stuff. See how it just kind of smeared things? It even made a new strand of hair, right? We get up in here. So you can't use it all the time. What I've found it useful for is kind of this very outer, the real flyaways, the ones that have gone far, far away. And so I've done this on this brush tool. I needed to say, I've made that new layer. The reason it's working from a blank, it's sampling a blank layer, it's sampling the layer below it, is because I have sample all layers checked up at the top here, and also content aware. So be sure that content aware is selected by default, as is sample all layers, but you need to have that on in order to do what I've done here, which is created a layer just to fix the strays. So right, I can turn this layer on and off. There they are. So I'm not actually painting anything on the image itself. Even that one came too close to the one next to it. So if it's getting confused, we might try the healing brush tool, which as opposed to the spot healing brush tool, I have to select where Photoshop is sampling from. And so I'm using current and below as my sample layer. And so what I do is hold the Option key and click here. This is the area I want to sample from. And then I paint over it and it's good. Again, Option here, paint. There we go. Similarly to this one is the rubber stamp tool. The rubber stamp tool isn't calculating healing. It's literally copying from one area to another. So sometimes the healing stamp fixes might be a little bit obvious. So you kind of have to be careful and selective with those, right? Like we could see up here, this isn't a uniform blue up here. It's like a light blue, a dark blue, kind of got some green in there. So over here is slightly darker than over here. So we really have to be thoughtful about where we're sampling from when using the sampling tool. And you want to get a sampling tool, the stamp tool, the rubber stamp. I'm actually going to make this brush a little smaller and come up here and hold the Option key again. And I get this crosshair. That's telling Photoshop, this is what we're sampling. And whoop. You don't always want to go in a straight line with the stamp tool either, because it can start to be obvious again. And so what I like to do, to make sure I have a soft brush, yes, very soft brush, 0% hardness. One of the things I like to do with the rubber stamp tool is kind of do this and, pick different areas and do sort of spots and short sections. Sometimes I get carried away and get too far away from the thing I'm trying to fix. Right. So, now you can see, right? I don't know if y'all can see this kind of almost a blue streak there. Maybe it's not obvious, not on my computer, but sometimes I start to see these little smudges. So as you can see, if I'm going to go in and do this one hair at a time, it's going to take a while. So I'm going to come back to the healing brush tool and see if I can kind of sample some more areas and do a little better job. Oops. And you see how I sample and brush and sample and brush and go back and do it again. Right, so you can see that kind of smudge right there. It's just not working. All right. So that's one way to do it. And yeah, even as I zoom out, I don't know if you can see these tiny little smudges here. Depending on print, there's something maybe further I can do to fix those, but takes a while. Sorry, I saw this one just jumping out was bothering me. I have to get this one there. And now I switch back to the rubber stamp, and I'm gonna kind of touch that guy out, right? It's pretty good. So kind of fixed up a few, oops, I'll zoom in a little so we can still see what we're doing. Fixed a few of those major strays, the ones that are really kind of sticking up. Looks great. I haven't saved this in a while, so I'm going to go ahead and do that because we don't want to lose our work. Okay, there. And then, oh, generative fill is a fun way to try your hair fix. If you haven't seen generative fill, this is Photoshop's new AI function. I've had, it's kind of hit or miss, especially with hair, but sometimes it's looked pretty good. So what we do is I'm on my working layer. I'm going to take the lasso tool, which is one of our top selection tools, and you can get it with the L key on your keyboard. I'm going to kind of like roughly, trace around her hair, or the edges of her hair. What I just did to move the screen up as I held my lasso selection down was held down the space bar to turn it into a hand. You can move the image around. And then I'm going to hold the shift key and add the rest of my selection in here. This one's a little more complicated too because of her hand right there on her hair. I'm hitting the option key to just kind of take this part of her finger out. There we go. I'm going to come down here too and kind of select this stuff. And then I can choose, oh, let me make sure that the selection looks nice. So this is called the contextual taskbar down the bottom here. It changes depending on the tool that you're using. And so what I'm going to do is choose this little brush here. It says modify selection. And I'm going to make it smoother because I kind of just drew it with my trackpad. Let's go 4, try 4. All right. Just to kind of any little, jaggies that I might have left in there. And now I'm going to choose generative fill. I'm not going to enter anything at all. And I'm going to see what happens. It's pretty good at figuring it out. And so what it's doing now is looking at what's in that selection and coming up with something. It gives you 3 options, to greater and lesser degrees of accuracy and usability. And so there's 1, option 2, option 3. None of those are really what I want. So we could also try, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to choose generative fill again, and I'm going to say neat curly hair. Wow, that's something. But this is not bad. Oh, whoops, I hid. We go through away. That's another option. Definitely not going to work. That's pretty nice. So generative fill may or may not work for you. I still use it, but I haven't quite found the right use for it yet. For example, even if this one was one that we would want to use, you see how the texture of her hair changes between her actual hair, which is nice and kind of sharp and well lit, and this AI hair, which is not. Actually, one of the things that we could do, one of the things you do with the this generative fill filter is you try to cover the space you want to fill. And if you'll bear with me, I just want to see if we did this as a slightly smaller selection, would it be less sort of, wild? And so I'm just kind of like making the selection a little more sedate here. And that's the next thing we're going to look at is another selection tool. But yeah, I just want to I'm making the selection smaller in order to kind of tighten up the information that that the AI has to do its thing. And because it's masked, I could adjust that mask at the end. So now let's see what generative fill does. This is always exciting because you're never 100% sure what you're going to get with the generative fill. That looks a ton better than it did a second ago. It's still not exactly what I want. This is obviously not going to work. But right, this one isn't terrible. And I could clean up this mask relatively well. Do that. And I'm going to call this generative fill hair. All right, this is her actual hair. And the strays come back. Then channel selection. So another way that we can select hair is by using the color channels. And what these are is the data that informs the red, green, and blue channels within the image. And what we want to look for here is the channel with the most contrast. So I'm clicking on the red channel. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in here because this is what we want. There's green, blue. Blue looks to be the most contrasty channel. And typically that's the case with people. So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna select it. And it gave me a whole lot of stuff. So I'm gonna choose select, modify, smooth. Let's try our 6 pixels. There we go. I'm hitting my L key for the lasso to kind of, there we go. Let's go back. So right now we've got our selection. I need to take all of this stuff out. What I'm doing here is I'm hitting either the shift key to add to the selection. You can see the plus come up, or the option key to subtract from it. And I'm just kind of taking out her face stuff here. There, one more. And now, we see all of that. Go back to my layers, and I'm gonna choose mask. And I want to invert that mask. So what's happened here is, I can show you, the mask has actually worked, but I need to fill back in the parts that I allowed to mask out. So I'm just gonna make a big brush. I'm gonna make it much larger. And I am going to make this white, and I'm just gonna color her back in. Now what's happened? There we go, much better. You can see how the hair edges are much better now. But because we have done that, we've actually removed the background. So I'm going to put a background layer back in. Yeah, the channel selection hair method seems to be the most rewarding one that I've found lately, right? There we go. All of that stuff is gone. But because here's the background layer, I still have this one in my image. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna create a new layer, and turn my background back on. I'm gonna choose a color, and I'm gonna fill this layer with it. Edit, fill, foreground color. Voila. Now, the reason we still see that hair here is because the mask isn't dark enough. So I'm gonna come in here and just make the mask even sort of thicker up here to kind of mask out some of these flyaways as well. Now, obviously I have to come in here and sort of fix up. I'm going to hit X to make it go back to black, right? And this is just kind of a time and patience effort. This is the ones, on my selection missed or whatever I need to do. Yeah, just her knuckles make it really difficult. What I've done here in the past as I've been working on things like this is I zoom way, way in. I make my brush very small, and we can see that the edge here is very hard. So I can do a harder edge on my brush. So I'm going to choose Control, click, and go to like a 50% hardness to start, and see if I can mimic this great edge. I'm on, my foreground color is black, so I'm painting out the mask hair here, right? And so that hard edge, I don't want a feathered edge here. I want this hard edge because this is her fingers. When you're doing stuff like this, this is where one of those drawing tablets really comes in handy. I've got so used to doing it on my mouse pad, but it does seem like one of those drawing tablets would be nice if you're doing a lot of this kind of really fine adjustments. Make my brush a little smaller. Boop. Oh yeah, look at that. Really nice. Pretty good edge. Come back and clean that up later. And the channel selection mask worked pretty well for the hair. You know, like I said, I can come in and clean up some of this stuff later on by continuing to kind of work within the mask. Yeah, hair is a bear. But those are some ways to kind of clean up your messy hair. You can also, I'm gonna show you on another picture how to dodge and burn and change the color of hair. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna get, it's this one, Sarah. So again, this one was an ARW formatted image. I opened it in RAW. You know, this is what we get, and I can just hit this auto, and it, you know, it pops some of that stuff. It kind of did that levels adjustment that I did automatically. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. And what we are gonna do here is dodge and burn her hair. And so what we can do is we're gonna copy this layer, call it brighten hair. And I'm gonna choose the dodge tool, which is this one right here, basically a brightener. And I'm gonna make a 500 pixel soft brush, right? Very soft, 500 pixels, great. And under the range, I'm gonna choose highlights because I want to brighten her hair. And so it's only gonna affect the highlights. Exposure in the 5 and 10% range. And it's not painting white, but I like to make my colors the default colors. And then we can just dodge in here to bring out those highlights. Right, it could, if you did much more exposure, if you do too much, it'll be too much, right? So probably 5% is even better there. I'm gonna go back. All right, let's try 5% here. Just to kind of make it much better. Subtle, right? Just brings that little highlight out. It's the same to darken hair with the same tool area. Here underneath the dodge tool is the burn tool. And in this case, we're going to affect the shadows. I'll dial this, well, I'll leave this exposure at 10%, but I think 5 is working better. And so what'll happen here is it's going to kind of darken things. Darken. See how those dark areas got a little darker? Just added that little bit more. Oh yeah, we can change our hair color too. I don't know how well this is gonna, oh good. Here's another hair selection thing. Hers is a little, this straight hair, you know, is easier than curly hair. I'm using the object selection tool or quick selection tool just to get selection of her hair. All right. And I'm gonna choose to make a mask. And I'm gonna have another, you know, I would default to saturation, but let's do color balance. I am going to option drag that hair selection up one level, go back to my color balance options, and start working on changing her hair color. Now, again, you know, I would have to kind of fix the mask after the fact, but you see how that might work in here. Yeah, midtones is going to work best in this instance. And do we want our hair to just be blue? Let's try that. Oh, that's a nice color. No, don't like that. Very red. There we go. Pink almost. I'm going to come in here and just for my sake, kind of fix this mask a little bit. Oh, had the wrong key. There we go. 200 pixel, the sharp 30% hard brush. You have to select your brush tool in order to change your mask. I still had the quick select tool selected. That's why I wasn't getting my options that I wanted. There, just got the little wing there, little edge. This one, right? Okay, turn it off. Yeah, okay, I have to fix that. Whoops. Voila. Yeah, fix up that selection a little bit. I've got her ear, kind of caught her ear in there. Maybe that's too much. Maybe we want to dial it back some, but still give her different cast to her hair. So yeah, quick and dirty, brighten, darken, dodge, and burn, and change the hair color. You can do the same kind of thing with, select the hair and use hue saturation, color fill, and blending modes. There's a variety of different ways that you can accomplish the same sort of things here. I'll just go ahead and save that because I like to. We can also dodge and burn the skin to give some kind of contouring, like a makeup kind of situation. So let's go ahead and do this. I've come back, I'm back in our original image, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy this layer, and I'm gonna kind of burn in a little bit of, like, just add a little darkness here, right on the edges. And then I'm gonna use the dodge tool and kind of lighten things up a bit. Right, you see that happening. Another way to do a kind of a way I've recently learned and like now is this way. I'm gonna make 2 curve adjustment layers on this thing, and I'm gonna say this one is, I'll call this dodge. I'm sorry, I'll say lighten and darken. All right, I'm gonna come to this curves layer, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna drag it up here to make it much lighter. I'm gonna take this curves layer and drag it down here to make it much darker. Then I'm going to hit Command I to invert both of these masks. And now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna paint over these masks to reveal those curve adjustments. I'm gonna hit B for my brush. I want a hard brush in this case. And I want white because I'm painting out of the mask. So I'm just kind of going over what are already sort of the highlights. And then I'm going to come into the darken one and I'm going to do some of this. Make sure you're painting on the mask itself too. Where's another good? Let's try here, right along this edge. Okay. And now what we can do is adjust those masks. Whoa, too many clicks. All right, adjusting the mask. So I'm on this darkened curve layer. You can see these dark stripes I painted on her face. And now I'm gonna start to feather it out kind of a lot. And then I'm gonna go into the lighten one and do the same thing. Too much, go, go, go. Somewhere in there. Yep. So yeah, this is a really pretty neat way to do this contouring. So all you do then, right, you create those 2 curves layers, make them darker and lighter. You're not, although we sometimes think of curves as color layers, they are, you're making the colors that already exist in the image brighter and darker. And then by feathering out those selections, it loses those hard edges and gives us this nice kind of contour effect. It makes features of the face, sort of pop out. Yeah, I really like that one. Skin retouching, fun stuff. So skin retouching is, I'm going to turn off these contours so we can kind of see what I'm doing here. You want to use the healing brush, the clone stamp, and another method that I'm going to talk about. But the first thing that we want to do is zoom in. And we're going to go over, I'm going to create, right, I'm on my working layer. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this one blemishes. And then I'm going to come in here with my spot healing brush and kind of get rid of some of these little blemishes on her face. Take out some of the, and so yeah, we could just kind of like spot everything. What I just did there was I hit the Command plus key twice to zoom in 2 levels, and then I hit my space bar to drag around so I can get into this area here. Whoops. So right, you can see it actually just drew more. So let's get the stamp out. And so I'm gonna just make this even smaller. I'm gonna hit Option, click, and just boop over here. Boop. There we go. Kind of there. I think there was a hair up here sticking in her forehead. Yeah. Good. And so now with the healing brush tool, spot healing, clone stamp, we can kind of touch out any blemishes that we want to just disappear out of there, and maybe get some hairs out of her face, things like that. And you can see I made them on a layer above. I made them above the layer that I was working on, so it is non-destructive. I can turn them on and off and go back and change all of that if I like. So that's one way to do it. Then we have some of these techniques, have a lot of steps. So I sometimes have to look up my notes. So here's the one way to use a mask to do blurring. I'm going to go ahead and merge these two layers just to get those blemishes in there. And so what I've done is I've clicked these two, and I'm going to say merge. All right, okay. I merged it, applied my mask, which is fine. And now I'm going to call this working again. There. I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to call it skin blur. And I'm going to choose filter Gaussian blur. There we go. 50. Just kind of trying to get it to where the texture kind of falls off. Yeah, but you can't make it, it has to be somewhat realistic. So let's stick with something like 7. All right. I'm going to put a mask on the layer. I'm going to set the opacity to 50 and invert that layer. And now we'll come on down, and what we're going to do is unmask some of this layer in a similar way to how we use the feathered mask to darken and lighten, but we're going to change the flow, which makes how would you describe that? It changes the kind of the quantity of paint coming off of the brush. The best way to demonstrate is for me to kind of show you. So we're on my skin blur layer mask. I have white selected, and I have a flow of 25. And I'm going to start to, it's 50% opacity. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's what, so I'm going to make this 100% opacity so that we could kind of see the change that I'm making. You can sort of see what's happening here, how it's kind of like blurring out a little bit. I was on a brush, but I wondered why that wasn't working. B for brush, not clone stamp. Okay. Now, I'm going to change my flow to 50%. Oh, there we go. See, that's too much, right? Let's go back to the 25% flow. And we'd start every 50% opacity to show you the real deal. Still on a brush. There, that's much nicer. You see it kind of blurring out a little bit, softening right here under her eyes. Great. Yeah, so that's one way to do it. Kind of soften. But when we use that method, we've lost a little bit of our texture, right? The texture of the skin, like her pores are gone. And this is where frequency separation comes in. We looked at it a little earlier with the high pass, right? The high frequency pass that we use to brighten up the eyes or change the contrast in the eyes. But now we can use this to actually smooth the skin, and it looks really cool. The way that you set up for frequency separation, the reason I save this to last is because you have to flatten your image when you do this. You don't have to, but after we do frequency separation, the texture lives on one layer and the color lives on another layer. So if you make an adjustment, you have to adjust both of them. And so that's why I go ahead and I take care of my eyes, I take care of my hair and color and blemishes and all of that, because I'm about to flatten the image. And so I actually have an action to do this. If you're not familiar with Photoshop actions, you can actually record sequences of steps and then just replay them. Because the way that you set up to make a frequency separation is by you first flatten the image. I'm not going to play I'm trying to narrate my action for you. I'm not going to play it. I'm just going to run through the steps and just tell you what they are. So I've turned on all of the layers that I want to have on. I've got my color adjustment, my eye adjustment. I have the hair adjustment that we made, cutting this out. And so I'm going to merge this, flatten this image. So I'm going to hit Control and choose Flatten Image. Discard hidden layers. Yes, I have already saved my file. So if I want to go back, I can. And then you duplicate the layers 2 times. I just drag down once and drag down twice. And I name one high. This will be texture. And I'll name one low. And this will be color. I'm going to take these 2 things and I'm going to highlight both of them by hitting Shift click. And I'm going to hit Command G to group those. And I'm going to call it frequency separation. This way I know. Then I'm going to turn off the high texture layer. I'm going to come down to the low color layer. I'm going to choose filter, Gaussian blur. Maybe we'll go up to something like 10 here. All right. Yeah. No texture. And I'm going to choose OK. Then I'm going to turn my high texture layer back on. And I'm going to choose image and apply image. Oops. So I'm stopping now because I'm actually on the low color layer selected. I have to select, I turned it on, but I didn't select it. So high texture, image, apply image. The source is the image we're working on. The layer we're going to apply is the low color layer. The blending mode is going to be subtract. And the rest of these are good. Scale should be 2 and offset should be 128. Scale 2 means half the effect, and offset 128 is directly in the middle of the sort of tone scale of 256 colors. And so I click OK. Well, that doesn't look right. We change the blend mode of this layer to linear light and Photoshop magic. Then we select the low color layer. The parts of this that we want to smooth, I selected the low color layer. I'm using the lasso tool now to select areas I want to smooth. So I'm just kind of going over forehead. You don't have to do all of this at once, but I kind of like to try. I'm going to come out here. I'm going to come over here. You can make the sound effects too when you're drawing with your lasso tool. So now we've got these areas that we want to smooth. I am going to come down here to the contextual taskbar to choose modify selection, or I can choose select, modify, and feather. Go with about 40 in this case. Good enough. Okay, so I've lassoed the areas I want to smooth, and I've feathered it about 40 to make it really sort of blend well. Now, while the low color layer is selected, I'm going to come up again and choose filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Here, probably about 20 maybe, and choose OK. There we go. So let me hide these selection. So you can see what it did, right? We saw the mask selection blur earlier, right? Where these areas of her face were blurred, but you lost the kind of the texture of her pores. And what high and low frequency separation does is it preserves that texture. This is not anything that we really could show, but because we've applied, we did that apply image step. Now they essentially blend together to create this nice, smooth skin effect and realistic skin effect, right? So here's where we started, and here's where we end up. I can go back and, I can blur it some more if I want. Just do it again. There's without the high layer, and then the original. Yeah, that's frequency separation, which I myself have only recently learned, and I just think it's amazing. You preserve all of this texture, but you also get that kind of nice blemish-free look to your skin. And so here we are, right? That's practically done. Oh, it's 10 after 8 too. We can get in here and we can change the background. If we want to do that, I have to deselect. There we go. I'm going to select the subject again, smooth the selection, and flatten image. All right. Now I can remove the background, put in something different if I like. You know what? Let's do generative fill. Let's see what we get. So I've just selected the background, and I'm going to let generative fill come up with it for me. But that's no fun. Sort of a portraity background. I guess they put her in a field. That's an interesting one. I wonder if I can. So I've generated this field, right? But it doesn't look really real, and I don't really expect it to in this context. But if I wanted it to look a little more real, I might apply a blur to it. Let's give it a Gaussian blur again, but like 2, just to sort of fake that as if they're separated from each other. This obviously isn't going to work, but it's pretty fun. So now let me just put a color in there, foreground color. That'll be fine. That's about what we've got. And fill. Okay, great. So I've gone through these steps of portrait editing, and you should know about Photoshop's new neural filters. I'll go ahead and flatten this again. So I'm going to choose filter and neural filters. This is more AI stuff. And you can use these to do some of the things that I've told you about tonight. Skin smoothing. You can make it even more smooth. How smooth? Very smooth. You want to try to definitely put in a picture that you would like to work on and play with these neural filters, because it's, again, just magical. Smart portrait. This will allow you to do things like make a person much happier, or appear much happier, or look like the Joker. Some of them process in the cloud, because this is it's not beta, but the AI uses a Creative Cloud server. So this has taken a moment. Yeah, she's going to be very happy. No, right? No, we don't want that. That's wrong. These filters are kind of fun and interesting. Sometimes they work well, other times not so much. Let's make her hair 30 much thicker. There's thicker hair. And this one's pretty fun. I think the eye direction will make her look over here. I think she's going to look to the right now. Oh, you can see it. Yeah, it redrew her eyes. Crazy, right? Wow. So many of these things that we've done, they're kind of building some of these tools into Photoshop that work better and worse, right? You can put surprise on her face, which, if I remember right, was like an eyebrow up. Surprise. Crazy. Yeah, makeup transfer will allow you to take another picture with makeup you like and put it in. Colorizing is really great to add different, as you can see, colors. It has different profiles you can get into here. What is retro purple yellow? So that's pretty nice. And this actually works really great too with your old time family pictures. Super zoom will zoom in and retain its resolution. Depth blur will fake your depth of field. And beta means that they're still working on it. They haven't actually released it. The next time they have an official Photoshop release, it'll probably come out. JPEG artifacts will remove some of those jaggies from your JPEG files. And photo restoration, if your pictures are damaged, torn, it does a pretty good job of fixing them. when you do these kind of neural filter changes, you can output it. Usually I put it onto a new layer mask because I don't, again, non-destructive. I can change my mind. And so let's see what we've got here. This is what we worked on with the frequency separation and all of the stuff we've done for the last nearly 2 hours. And then this new layer here is the one that we just did with the
neural filters, which is starting to look kind of uncanny. And then this is the picture that we got, which looks slightly more realistic. We may also want to sharpen the image for output. The way that I like to do this is I would duplicate the background layer again, and I would choose Filter, Other, High Pass. And this is another high texture layer. And so you could see kind of the edges that it's finding in here, in her hair, around her eyes again, nose, mouth, lips, kind of like the bottom of your nose, you want to be sharp. Your lips, you want to be sharp. The bottom of your chin, you want to be sharp. And those look pretty good. It might be a little overdone, but I'm going to leave it this way. And again, we choose the overlay option. And so if we zoom in, oops, you can see how much sharper that is, especially in her hair, like it jumps out. And maybe it's too much, in which case we might lower the opacity or do a little masking on this layer. You know, for example, maybe we only want her eyes, nose, and chin, like I said, to be sharpened. Her nose, around her lips, kind of under here, a little bit in her hair. And so now, right, I turned on the quick mask so that I could see what I'm working on. I'll turn it back off and we can see how things pop just a little bit. That sharpness and that contrast have really are kind of invaluable to me. Wow, and so here we are. That's a whole lot I've gone over the last 2 hours. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate everyone's attention.